Ada for refusing to allow a pregnant couple to stay at my house. Hi all, asterisk throwaway account. My partners, we'll call him Jim, brother Jack, and girlfriend Jane, recently found out they were pregnant. Both 23, but have only been together 4 months. Both live at home with their parents, both single parents. He works full time as a second year apprentice, and she works part time while doing college. They are both scared and excited, but seem a bit naive to the reality of raising a baby. They don't have a plan about how they would cope or living arrangements, etc. Jim and I are older, 37, and are comfortably set up. No children. However, I've made it clear I don't want them to rely on us for somewhere to live or money. They have to manage this situation themselves. Jim and I agreed on this, expecting some kind of request for help. As expected, the first request came asking that they stay with us till they can get some money together after the baby is born. We said no. They complained and said, "We have spare rooms and they will contribute. Our concerns are this will become a financial burden on us, and we will end up paying many of their expenses." I don't know Jane. I've met her 3 times and don't know how she would be to live with I work from home 3 days a week and need some quiet. That's going to be hard with a baby. Around, I know her family and friends are all close and spend a lot of time together. I don't want my house to be a hangout spot for people I don't know. They would not give a time frame. There has been no planning here. So I have no idea how long they would even stay or if they would stick to a plan anyway. They also couldn't confirm their plan after they'd get money together. No idea about the area they would live in, the cost of rent and utilities, etc. We know that they are welcome at Jack's mother's house. They will just have to make do with one room for the 3 of them. Jack's mother also gets heavily subsidized utilities, so it will have a minimal impact to them from a financial perspective. Ever since we said no, their family has been hounding us and acting like we are abandoning them. They are not out on the street. They are just going to be in a tight space and inconvenienced for a while. I'm pretty firm on this stance. They are not entitled to our space or resources and made a choice to have a baby, but made no independent plans on how to manage it. Would be interested to hear other people's views on this, AITA, or are they being entitled? Ada for not giving my parents the baby blanket my great grandma made for me so they can use it for my baby sister. My great grandma made a baby blanket for me when my mom was pregnant. She did that for all of her kids, grandkids, and then great grandkids. I was the youngest until now. Great grandma would make it clear to the parents involved that the baby she made the blankets for should be considered the owners, and it shouldn't be something they kept from us. So, this is what always happened. I always had mine. My parents did try to take it from me a few times, but great grandma stepped in each and every time. I loved mine because she had started experimenting with her knitting, and my blanket is more unique than the rest and feels just a little more personal. I treasure it despite being a 17-year-old guy. I treasure it more because great grandma died when I was 10 and I miss her like crazy. So my parents couldn't have more kids for years. They tried for years and even did IVF when I was 7, but didn't have another kid from it. Their focus being so set on that, I always felt like I wasn't good enough. This is something extended family brought to their attention a few times. It was comments like, "I just want a baby so bad I can't imagine my life without a child," from my mom, and comments from my dad like, "We feel so incomplete without a baby," that would get family members to take notice. Those were some of the kinds of comments that left me feeling as I do. It was never another baby. It was always a baby, like I was invisible. They talked about having a baby being their biggest dream. It stung so much to have their life focus around that, and they'd get so depressed about not having a baby. Great grandma, before she died, told them to be thankful for the blessing, aka me, and how they already had a baby and they were letting me grow up without them. It didn't change anything. And I did basically grow up without my parents. They have no idea who my friends are or what's going on in my life. This was a surprise pregnancy, and my parents are so excited. They did all the early tests to find out they're having a girl, and they started shopping and all kinds of stuff for her. But then my mom got sad because great grandma isn't around to knit her a blanket, too. So they told me they wanted mine. They didn't ask. They told me. And when I said no, they grew angry. They said she deserves to have a blanket from great grandma and their baby needs one. I asked what I was, and they said, an almost grown man. I left the blanket with my best friend because I was afraid my parents would search the house to find it. They were so pissed, and they started doing the guilt trip saying my baby sister deserves better. And how can I look at myself in the mirror knowing I don't want to share this with her? They told me it's like, I don't even want her to exist, or I hate her for something, and she's not even born yet. Ada for telling my dill for fuck's sake. I have a life, and I'm not going to be cookie cutter grandma, and I will call the police. My son and Deal have been married for around 7 years at this point. They have 2 kids. All of my children are out of the home and living their lives. My husband and I are still working and will probably retire in 10, 15 years, around 70. My Dill and I got along much better before the kids came into the picture. They live 30 minutes away, and she is always trying to drop them off. I thought my son was in on this, but no. I sat them down, and he had no idea this was happening. I showed them many texts asking for me to babysit, and he was under the impression that I have only babysat twice this month, not 16 times. Apparently, she has been dropping them off with me to hang out with people, and my son was under the impression she was taking them with her. I started to communicate in a group chat with them, so everyone was on the same page. I only respond to her in the group chat, and if she starts to spam me with texts about it, I throw a screenshot in the group chat and have my son deal with it. We have talked, and it comes down with her wanting her kids to have the same relationship she had with her grandparents. In short, I explained that I am still working, and I will not have that relationship, that I can't have the kids every other day, just like she had growing up. We agreed to every 2 weeks to have a grandma day. All good for about a year. My son is now traveling for work, and she is at it again. The time difference makes it hard to have him shut it down. When that happens, I was home for about an hour when she showed up at my home. She wanted me to babysit when she went shopping. I had enough at this point. I told her, for fuck's sake, I have my own life, that I will not be the cookie cutter grandma she wants. And if she tries to leave the kids with me from now on without my agreement, that I will call the police for abandonment. She called me a jerk and stormed off. My son called, trying to smooth it over, and saying I may have gone too far. Edit, for everyone going on about how he couldn't know, doesn't he talk to his kids? The kids were 4 months and 1 3/4 years old when she kept dropping them off. They weren't really talking. The oldest sure could move, but not a big talker. It really hit off when she was pregnant and got even worse when the second one was born. Ada for telling my friend it's not my problem she married a useless man. I, 32F, am a single mother of 2 kids, 6M and 5MF. I am a single mother by choice. My kids are donor conceived. I am lucky enough to have a good job, French teacher in a private school, and a paid off house, parents' life insurance, and inheritance. Before I had either of my kids, I made sure to have a year's living expenses saved. Then I would take a sabbatical to recover from birth, as well as bond with my kids. While on sabbatical, I still tutor some kids for some extra income. My friend, 34F, just had a baby 2 months ago. She is the breadwinner in her household, and her husband has been unemployed since he was laid off during COVID. It was great to be pregnant at the same time, as well as having a friend with a newborn. But it has turned sour. She has been saying how jealous she is of me being able to take off a whole year from work, how she would have loved to not worry about losing their home, how she doesn't even have a couple $100s in her savings account, let alone a whole year's worth of living expenses. I usually ignore it or brush it off because I kind of can understand the stress she is under. Well, starting about 10 days ago, she started hinting at not being able to afford daycare, and any mention of her husband taking care of their kid is brushed off. Then she started remarking on how much free time I must have, which I deflected by saying, truthfully, that being a single mom to a baby and a small kid left me no free time, actually. Then last night she came out with it and asked if, suppose I could do her a favor and watch her kid while she's at work. I was firm but polite when I said that I couldn't, that I'm not capable of watching two kids under 6 months. She started almost begging me, saying she can't afford daycare, and if she is not back at work, she will lose her job, and they will end up homeless. I again brought up her husband, and she said that he was not good with kids and isn't capable of taking care of her kid. I kept saying no. She kept pushing until it escalated to her calling me heartless, and me telling her that it's not my problem. She chose to have a kid with a useless man. Now she blocked me. I'm feeling very guilty about what I said and feeling like an AH. Ida for telling my husband's kids how broke he was when we met after they insinuated I was a gold digger. Evie 38F been married to my husband Rob 52M for 4 years now. My husband's late wife died 1 year before we met, and we dated for 2 years before marriage. He has two kids, 28 Madison and 26 Brett. Note, I'm not calling them my stepkids because they explicitly told me I am not their stepmom, just their dad's wife. I didn't play a part in raising them, so I'm okay with that. It's always been a tense between us. I've tried my best to be kind to them and have been generous when I can be. But they're very cold with me. Being a child of divorce, I can partially relate to a parent moving on. So I try not to force anything. Madison recently got engaged, and we are excited about it. Everyone was over recently, and she asked about a wedding budget from us. And Rob told her he was able to contribute $10K. She has bigger hopes for her wedding than this, so she was upset and kept asking for more. Rob, however, is still working hard on building his savings back up. Before his late wife died, he basically wiped out his cash savings, had to cash out his 401K, and even took a small mortgage on his house to cover medical costs as well as life expenses, since he had to cut back on working. Eventually, he had to drop that job for a more flexible but lower paying one, so this 10K is actually really generous from him. Rob went to run an errand, and it was just me and his kids. Madison then asked me if I am going to give any in addition to what her dad is giving. I told her we're a marital unit, and that's what we discussed together as a reasonable amount to contribute. She then said, I should have known. Obviously, you married an older man for what he had, not for what you could give. I knew she didn't like me, but this is the most flat-out rude thing she ever said. I kind of lost it and said, excuse me, who do you think has been paying the second mortgage your dad took out to pay his debts? Truth of the matter is, I make more than her father by a large margin. I have no debt and have been paying 70% of the household bills the whole time we've been married. The 10K we're giving her is available because I've been able to subsidize her father's living expenses the last few years. I made it clear that not only am I not a gold digger, I'm literally wealthier than my older husband. She called me stuck up after this and stormed out. Then she called her dad later and said that I told her that I blamed her mother for being sick, for her not having a better wedding budget. I told him what happened, and he was mad at her, but also said I shouldn't have shared his financial details with his kids.